excited about the outrolling of good intentions from members of the city council who seem to be lined up tonight to ban the internet. They are making war, as it were, against the intergalactic, interstellar, intercontinental internet that is a source of liberty and a liberating force in many, many areas, and you might say against many industries, including the hotel, motel industry, a very high-end capital investment business that is chafing under the success of the short-term home vacation rental networks around the world. With me in the studio here at Noogaradio, we have Russell Stroud. Russell, there are many good motives that are in the hearts of council members who are favoring or tending to favor the ordinance proposed by Chip Henderson. What are some of their high ideals?
Well, the high ideas are very good. The intentions are extremely good because it's all mostly focused on protecting the people, at least outwardly. It's all focused on protecting the people because you have a lot of school people who are complaining, saying, what if we have someone who rents a short-term vacation rental house and it's within 100 yards of a school? And that person who rents that short-term vacation rental house, I'll call him Airbnb from now on, an Airbnb house is a sex offender, or maybe was a sex offender at one point and it expired. Well, at that point now, you've got someone who has a violent sexual past or a deviant sexual past who now is renting a house next to a school, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the fear. And it's the existential fear of there's nothing I can do about it that I think is driving a lot of this. Of course, that comes with a lot of industry. There really is nothing that the city can do about a lot of industry, but Airbnb is a new emerging one.
So the city can't stop a sexual predator or a former rapist who's spent his time in prison and is now out. They can't prevent him from renting a room at the at a hotel downtown. Can they?
No, they could.
If he's just passing through.
As far as I know, they could not.
Right. All right. So they're helpless to stop bad people living here, and they're really helpless to stop bad people visiting here from doing something wicked.
Right, because Airbnb is, for the most part, aimed at people who aren't really from here. You know, like, as a Chattanoogan, I'm probably not going to rent a house in Chattanooga unless I just want to have a staycation, which is the thing, but I'm less likely to do that. It's more for the guy who's visiting on business from Colorado or California or New York or anywhere else.
He's Dubai.
Sure, if you want. Anywhere else. He's here for a very short period of time, maybe for a board meeting. He's meeting with friends. He needs a place to stay, and he doesn't want to get a hotel room because that's, it's a hotel room.
Well, we're suggesting here to our listener that this act is unconstitutional under the arbitrary and capricious provisions of law, which do not allow acts to be arbitrary and capricious, as the map is, because it divides people without a reason of like kind. One is banned from Airbnb, and the other one is allowed to have an Airbnb use of his house under permit. But there are good motives. What other good motives? Let's elaborate on that. Let's esteem the council for its right thinking in at least part of its deliberations here.
Sure. One of the big arguments that came forth, especially from people on Facebook, interestingly enough, people commenting on Facebook, is I don't want someone next to me who lives next to me to have an Airbnb, because that means there's going to be people coming and going all the time to the property next to mine, and it's going to cause our property values to go down. So there's a monetary damage to me because of the person who owns the property next to mine. There's also the absentee renter or absentee user of Airbnb, where the person doesn't actually live there. They bought the house strictly for the purpose of Airbnb, and they're worried that that'll be a case where they're not paying taxes, they're using the house for Airbnb, and they're using it as a side business that's not on any records. So obviously, from the city council's point of view, this should be registered or regulated in some way.
Because somehow that's unjust.
That's right? Unjust.
And we want there to be just treatment among neighbors.
If they're paying taxes, so should I. That sort of thing.
Well, I'm not sure that's an estimable high level reason. I mean, in other words, we're trying to find reasons that are admirable in the city council's.
I'm having a hard time.
That's not necessarily very admirable, and that's just maybe pragmatic.
Well, it is sort of admirable in the sense that I don't want to damage other people's property. I want to keep these individuals from damaging other individuals' property. So there is some admirable aspects to that, and there are valid complaints that have been raised on the side of the people because of that. So they are listening to people who have arguments against Airbnb. They are listening to the people who have these complaints, and I have seen them personally. They do exist.
Well, Darren Ledford said 100% of the people about whom he questioned about the prospect of Airbnbs in their neighborhood were against it. When they heard what it was, and they heard the question from him asking, is this okay? Every one of them said no.
And Demetrius Coonrod said something kind of similar. She said some people wanted it and some people didn't in her district.
Well, is that part of the mantle of courage then that city council members will be wearing if they vote to ban Airbnb, or is that not?
Well, I mean, if you're executing the will of the people as an elected official, I'd say that is an admirable action, even if the action necessarily goes against your conscience. Sure, I can see that as an admirable thing. The people want me to do this. I don't necessarily agree with it, but they've all voted. It's a democracy or a democratic republic, and I'm going to do it.
Even if it's clear that the ordinance itself is unconstitutional.
Well, I would go that far, but they may not see it as unconstitutional. They may not know that it's unconstitutional. Well, that would be the argument as well. It's not unconstitutional. So we have the power to regulate.
The argument in the press that the analysis in the press that this ordinance violates the arbitrary and capricious controls are not true. We have not been told that by Wade Hinton, our attorney, who advises us on municipal ordinance and municipal authority. Therefore, we're not really doing a wrong thing, and we can vote against the internet, against the gig city concept in good conscience.
In good conscience, yes, because the people want it.
Okay, so in sum, then let's see if we can summarize the overall scheme in their minds. We are providing for the public safety by regulating visitors who come and stay in private houses. We're creating equity, right? We're making it even because many Airbnb families are not subject to, are doing so outside of zoning ordinances, which it's the current platform is you cannot do it unless you rezone or petition for rezoning to R3 or 4, I think it is. And these are all R1s, and it's not allowed. So we're making for equal treatment. We're getting all those the 90% of Airbnbs who are not who are doing it illegally, quote unquote. We're getting them to be part of the system. So we're bringing fairness into the system. That's another argument in favor.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. And there was the argument too that a lot of these houses don't stand up to fire code in terms of they have a certain amount of people who are residing in the house, and it doesn't meet up fire code, so they can't have that many people in a house legally because of whatever rules there are regarding that. And there are a few other noise complaints. I think 1 or 2 houses had a noise complaint, and so there was an ordinance that was broken because of that. And so they're using that as precedent as well.
Visitors playing a stereo at a yard party,
or just
at the house,
or just being loud and yelling outside. Who knows? No word if that's actually connected to Airbnb or if it's just the homeowners were doing that or what have you. But it was a house that was known to be an Airbnb house, is all I know. So there are arguments against it in the sense that these houses may or may not have a tendency to break city ordinance. They may be inherently a nuisance. Might be an argument on the side of the city council.
But is there? Okay, so that again, we're trying to see here in favor of the city council's arguments. That right. Would be again in favor. We're bringing all these people under us, and we're saying you can't do it unless you're in our district. And then if you're in our map in our district that allows it, we will subject you to license fees and regulation. And you have to have smoke alarms. You have to post notices among your neighbors before you start, sort of giving them veto power.
Right, and you have to be within a certain zone. You have to fulfill certain requirements. You have to pay certain fees. I think it's monthly or perhaps yearly, and you have to pay all these different regulatory.
You have to pay the hotel motel tax, which is, I think, cent monthly,
which goes straight to the CVB. And I think that was a big part of wanting to regulate Airbnb.
I don't think the taxes paid by Airbnb people go to the Convention Visitors Bureau.
Doesn't the hotel motel tax inherently go to that?
Well, but I think it's routed through the city itself, or through the county. It's routed through the county.
Interesting.
I don't think this nonprofit organization, which is a 501c3, has authority to collect taxes directly. It receives the tax revenues, but it doesn't collect them. So
I'll trust you on that. Thank you.
Well, okay. So what other arguments can our listener consider Russell Stroud, our news director here at Noogaradio, that are in favor of the city's action? How can we esteem their vote to ban Airbnb? I mean, what other good arguments can we think of?
Well, it could be based in precedents as well, although it's not necessarily a good argument. There was the push to regulate Uber in a similar way. And so we do see this trend within the city council to try to regulate internet-based businesses. In terms of good faith arguments from the city council, I think we've sort of exhausted them as far as I can as far as I can perceive. I can't really think of any other good ones.
Well, the argument that we've raised here, Russell Stroud, on the David Tulis program, is that Airbnb is in the short-term vacation rental field is part of the gig city idea.
Yes.
And what in your mind, what is maybe that's not true. In your mind, though, what does gig city imply? Does it imply favor of controls like this that are for the public good, or does it imply disfavor of such efforts?
Well, when the gig city concept sort of rolled around, you had a lot of things called incubators that popped up. So you had the gig city, which is, of course, a big EPB project, where you have gigabit internet, which is 1024 gigabits per second, or megabits per second, pardon me. And you have a very high-speed internet, which can accommodate very high-speed, low-drag businesses at low latency, which is good. It means you can have an internet business like an Amazon can have a home office here and not worry about latency being a problem. It can communicate.
Latency means slowness?
Yes.
Slowness of delivery of your data?
A low latency is a good thing. Low latency means low delay, and it's counted in milliseconds. So if I have half a second of delay, that's a pretty big problem if I'm, say, trading stocks or something like that. So Gig City is great for that. But the incubators were interesting because the incubators came around to say, hey, look, we have this city that has a lot of young tech people in this city that now has gigabit internet. So we want to encourage them to start up businesses in Chattanooga, obviously, that are catered to by the gigabit internet. So now they are catered to, they're housed, they're taken care of. The city encourages them within the city of Chattanooga. That's the gig city concept. And now there are outside players, like say an Airbnb, that comes in and says, hey, gig city, cool. We can expand here. And it seems like it is against that gig city concept to come in and say, no, wait a minute, we don't want this internet business, not that one.
Right. So gig city is not just internet speeds made available through federal subsidy, $110 million bailout to EPB. That it's not just the speed of the internet that's the gig city idea. It's really a bigger idea than just that. It's not just a technical concept, Russell. Well, it's really an idea and ideal.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. You've got a Lamborghini, but you can't drive it anywhere. That's where you keep trying to regulate. You've got the gig city, you got the Lamborghini, but you can't drive it anywhere now. It's useless. It's completely useless if you're going to try.
So in the home sharing network, we have a Lamborghini, but we're saying, okay, well, we're gonna put a speed limit sign saying 45 miles an hour.
I'd say 25.
25 miles an hour. It's a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so your fast car is useless. But all right, let me ask you this though. If the city council is worried about defending the premise of zoning, it has to do what it's going to do tonight, I think, because it defends and upholds the prior claim against property of zoning, which lets the city control the use and control and force people to get permissions to change the uses of their property. There is a new paradigm in the past year called form-based coding, but still the coding premise is there and imposing itself upon the listener and everybody else in Chattanooga. And so if you don't do something, they're thinking, then we have people who are operating illegally and who have no plans to enter the system legally by petitioning for rezoning. So the plan under review will ban Airbnb type homes from ever applying. They're just going to be totally banned.
Yeah, you've set the precedent with zoning, saying we can control what people do with their property. That's the precedent that's been set. We can tell you that you can't have this extension built on your house because you're not zoned for that. We can tell you, that shed's not allowed in the zone, whatever they say. So you've already set that precedent. It's only natural to continue with it as a new concept comes out because you already have the precedent of zoning. It only makes sense. If you have a hammer, everything's a nail.
Well, what other areas of the internet economy, Russell Stroud, might be damaged by this attack on the gig city concept, this attack on the open economy concept of Airbnb?
Well, anything that may come in the future, honestly. If it could be anything. Uber is one that came under attack in the past. Internet businesses in general are being, I won't say scoffed at, but they're being sort of looked at with suspicion more and more as time goes by because people simply don't understand them most of the time. They don't understand what they do. How can they be a thing? They're intangible. And there are arguments for that too. But this and the Uber argument from before, or non-argument from before, set a precedent on attacking businesses which exist online or which use the internet as its main mode of communication, because it's telling businesses we can come in and say, no, you're not going to operate that way because we don't like it.
Is the internet threatening, you might say, the imprisoning power of geography? Is the internet doing away with the claims of geography upon businesses?
I would
Is
say
that good or bad?
well, it's neutral. It is what it is. I wouldn't say that a technological development is good or bad. It's how you use it. So it could be either. But yes, it is threatening geography for sure. But interestingly enough, we're still seeing quite a few people who are focusing quite a lot on local economy despite the internet, and maybe because of the internet, people pushing for it.
Well, how is it that the city council's arguments, Russell Stroud, for control of Airbnb networks, how is that a kind of argument for local economy? Almost like the one we make here on the David Tulis show. How is it like it, and how is it different?
And yes, and that's where the city council does sort of have a nice favorable light shown on it, because it is a nice argument for local economy, which is saying we don't want the easy internet companies coming in and messing with our economy. We want a Chattanooga economy. We want a local economy. We want it to be Chattanooga economy for Chattanoogans. And it's a decent argument, but unfortunately it's based upon control of the market, which is oddly enough not very local economy.
So it's a form of interventionism that has a kind of guise of being local economy, lococentric. We are for our people. We want our people to be under our authority and controlled by us, and we want their guests, who are strangers, also to be controlled by us and under our supervision indirectly. We want that as a public good. It is local economy, and we're trying to secure local economy by banning Airbnb in many parts of the city.
It's kind of an America First type argument. We're not going to buy from China. We're going to buy from America. Except instead of it being China, it's Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco, California. Instead of buying from these places, we're instead going to buy from Chattanooga. It's sound, but it shouldn't be forced.
So local economy and lococentrism, which favors the listener buying Chattanoogan. Like we want the listener, for example, to buy his groceries from Sean Schuster and his family at White Ivy Farm. They come to the Main Street Market every Wednesday from 4 to 6. They're also at the Mentone, Alabama market on Saturdays. We want them to buy from the Schusters, but we don't want to force them to do it. We don't want to. Your argument is we don't want to have a compulsion that's constraining people to be local. We want it to be free.
Yeah, we can't.
Sure, that's better.
It's absolutely better because it's based on a voluntary action instead of a forced one. People are much more likely to be okay with doing something if it's their own choice. And rightly so, we shouldn't force people into doing something that we agree with. There's no, I wouldn't say there's no moral imperative, but it's not a sin to shop elsewhere. It's not like you've now sinned against God and humanity for shopping elsewhere. We're not saying that. We're saying you should shop locally because it's probably the right thing to do, but you're not being made to do it. It's your choice.
So you're going to have a sounder local economy, Russell Stroud, our news director here at Noogaradio, a stronger local economy if it's among voluntary players who agree to buy and sell among each other, making connections that may be renewed later, let's say in Airbnb context, in a future visit. The visitor comes back from Saudi Arabia a second time and asks to stay at the same house as he did before. And so the absence of compulsion is enriching the human experience in Chattanooga and beyond.
Well, human connections throughout history have always been based upon people you know and people you fraternized with in the past. So local economies are always going to be stronger, probably for that reason, especially among business people. They're less likely to fraternize with and work with people from across the country than they are with people from their own local economy. Same goes for someone who lives in a neighborhood and their next door neighbor opens up a farmer's market. It's more expensive than Walmart, but my neighbor John runs it, so I'm going to shop there. The local economy concept doesn't need force because it comes naturally, I would say. Well,
the idea of raising property values, I think, is probably something in favor of an Airbnb type connection with a homeowner. I think if your neighbor is involved in that network, you could do the same. You're going to raise your value. You're going to do some redesign. You're going to have some new repairs done on the driveway, some new cladding on the side of the house. You may do some other repairs and improvements to make your house more attractive. And your neighbor's done that, and it seems to me that overall it would raise the quality of housing structures in Chattanooga, not reduce them.
Oh, and one thing that's worth noting too, by the way, is various realtors we've talked to in the past have been absolutely in favor of Airbnb. They see it as an increase in property value and an increase in overall quality of neighborhood. But one thing that's worth noting about Airbnb specifically is that they do vet people who rent from them, and they do vet people who operate Airbnb houses. It's not complete anarchy. There's a system within Airbnb,
and each party wants to be rated well by the counterparty.
Oh, they bend backwards to be rated well, yeah.
So there's an internal regulation. We don't have to have external compulsory regulation by the state, by non-interested parties. In this case, Chattanooga City government. Russell Stroud, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, anytime.
Russell Stroud is the news director here at Noogaradio, AM 1240. and FM 92.7. We're also 95.3 HD4 and live on YouTube, live on Facebook. Check out my bow tie today. Jeanette gave me an approval, but I had to change tie once, and we went through 4 others that were not quite up to snuff. But I'm passing the home front today, and I want to thank you for giving us a couple minutes of your time. Who is Sean Schuster, and why should anybody care? And who is his daughter, Juliana, and why should anybody care? What are they doing here? They are farmers. They live on Sand Mountain, and you can find them every Wednesday at the Main Street Market at 4 o'clock. David Tulis, let's find out more.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports